Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to Shop Talk. Today in Shop Talk, we're going to be talking initially about Task Manager and a couple secret things. They're probably not big secrets, but they're handy secrets to know. And we're also going to talk about one of the viewer questions that we got on Task Manager for this week. And so we're going to open with that before we cut to my co-host Glenn to introduce the rest of the amazing questions and content that we have to answer for you today about the various Windows episodes in the last week or two, as well as the IBM Stretch I think we have. So to jumping right into it, the question itself was, why is Task Manager not real-time priority? And the implicit assumption there is, or the implicit question there is, if it were real-time priority, then it would always have priority over everything else, and you would have a better shot at killing a rogue process that was trying to steal all the CPU cycles. And I almost agree. When I wrote the original first version, and I think it shipped this way in probably NT4 and maybe XP and maybe 2000, I don't know what point they changed it, but I initially, like the fourth instruction in the Task Manager startup code was go set my priority to high, because for that exact same reason, I wanted it to be able to at least compete with anything that was stealing CPU cycles. And if it was stealing them at regular priority, Task Manager would run preferentially over it. And so it could burn 99% of the CPU if it wanted to, but I would still get my cycles. So you could go in and find the process list and sort and do things and actually take control of your system. So why they stopped doing that, I think it was probably just for perf reasons. It probably just didn't help their metrics. But they said that, when I asked them, they said they have another mechanism for escalating the priority of Task Manager, but I have not found it to be as effective as the old high priority version. So your mileage may vary. I don't know what's the better solution because I don't know what their current solution actually is. In terms of other Task Manager tips, the reason you don't want to run real time, I should actually address first, is because if you have a mistake or a bug in Task Manager, let's say there's a loop and it doesn't yield for a while, it will use everything in the system preferentially. So you won't get a mouse. You won't get screen updates from the desktop window manager. You won't get anything that requires any CPU cycles because you're real time, baby, and you get them all. So in order to guard against the unforeseeable case that maybe there were a bug in Task Manager, you don't want to be at real time priority because it could just wreak havoc on the system if it were used non-judiciously. So the way that I start Task Manager is Control-Shift-Escape. And I don't do the Control-Alt-Delete where you go Control-Delete and then you pick Task Manager from a menu or a button or something. I haven't done it in like 20 years because the easier way to do it is just Control-Shift-Escape. And the way that one works is it actually uses the Win logon process to create a Task Manager process and spin it up on your desktop. So you're not dependent on the shell working. You're not dependent on anything working because by definition, Win logon is still working or the machine would bug check. So you can almost always get a Task Manager going in that way. And once you're in Task Manager, another handy tip is say you sort by process usage, and there's a couple processes fighting and they're bouncing around, so it's kind of hard to click on the one you want. Just hold down Control. Control gives you a momentary pause, so the sorting stops. And so now you can click on what you want, do your thing, and then release Control. And it allows you to click on things that would otherwise be jumping around and hard to click on. What else? I think if you do Shift or Control, I forget if it's Shift or Control, when you click Run New Task, it will bypass the Run Task dialog and will just give you a command window with administrative rights. And of course, how did you get those? Is that a bug? No, it's because you were launched by Win logon. So because you're on the secure console, you can run it with admin rights. And I think that's all the Task Manager lore I've got for today. So let's get joined by my co-host, Glenn. How you doing, Glenn?
I'm doing well, Dave. I have a follow-up question to the Task Manager stuff. Actually, before I even get into that, let's mention that's Ben341 who chucked that question in there. So I'll give you some kudos for that. And I fumbling through Facebook or Reddit or something, saw a thing the other day, someone had posted, and it was the Task Managers of it. It said that Task Manager had stopped responding.
Yeah, that can't happen.
Yeah, I was wondering what would cause that.
As far as I know, I've never seen it happen unless there was something wrong with the actual windowing system, like the user 32 in the client on the user side gets out of whack somehow, because I have not seen a case that I ever had to fix where Task Manager had a bug that caused that behavior. So it's not like Task Manager fell asleep. Task Manager was trying to do something like pump a message and didn't get one. So,
and is there something I recall? Can you have like can you open another version of Task Manager if one has failed, or is that like you're at the end of the end then?
No, if one is hung for some reason, say it calls into some API and that API never comes back, you can use Control-Shift-Escape again, and it will spin up another. First, it will try to talk to the one that's already running and say, hey, buddy, are you okay? Can you take over? And it will not answer. And so at that point, it will kick off another one for you, and then you can use that one to kill the first one in a battle royale death match of task managers, I guess.
That's pretty polite. Hey, buddy, you okay? It just sort of checks in first, and then, yeah.
Well, I'm trying to avoid getting two task managers. There's nothing wrong with two task managers, but it's a little weird. There can be only one, like the Highlander. So, yeah, it tries to ask the first one, just wake up, tell me you're okay, send me back a secret code to acknowledge that you are, in fact, running properly. And if it doesn't get that answer promptly, then it fires up and runs the second one.
Yeah, Highlander. I was thinking more of a George Costanza. There's Independent George and Girlfriend George. And
well, they can never meet. Yes.
Okay. So you put out a video on Dave's Garage there about that Stretch IBM machine. And that got quite a lot of comments. So we're going to start with some questions there. So the first one here comes from Ryan Paz. Dave, you forgot one important detail. Is there any Stretch still left? Where is it? Hopefully someone saved one, because this sounds like the prototype of what was basically not common until a Pentium P5 came along 35 years later.
Yeah, it's an amazing machine, and I don't know if there are any complete ones. If anybody knows in the comments, please let me know. But all the ones that I know of, like at the Living Computer Museum here, they had a console, I think. And down at the one in Palo Alto, the computer museum down there, they've got a operator's console and some units, some of the big racks. But this thing was enormous. It must have felt like a gymnasium. So it's not like people were storing these things. If they stopped fulfilling a useful purpose, it's one of those things. It's like I threw my Amiga away at some point when it was like a 15-year-old computer because what do I want this for? And then when it's a 25-year-old computer, you're paying money for them on eBay again. But there's that dead period in between the time it becomes no longer useful to you or becomes obsolete, and between that and the time it becomes nostalgic or valuable. And it's a lot of stuff to store in the meantime. So
now, just talking again about the size of it, I know during that video you had an image. I'm assuming that was of the actual thing. It was just like racks and racks and racks and racks. Sort of going.
Yeah,
back
and that was just memory.
There
was also racks of ALU, and there was racks of shift logic, and there was racks. I mean, this thing was enormous in size. I wish I could have found a good photo of, the overall scale of it to show you, but I didn't find one. So,
right. Yeah, it was just a memory. Yeah. So Joe MGJ says, so when can we expect the series? I bought a Stretch on eBay to start on Dave's Garage.
Well, that requires that there is one, and we're not sure about that point. So we'll start with the basics of whether one exists first.
And then that would have to be on a third channel called Dave's Warehouse.
Yes. Dave's Gymnasium. Just to confuse people.
There you go. Yeah. Pete Moore, he says, wow, down from 13 million to 7.5 million. What a bargain. He said it might be good for nukes, but can it play Fortnite? Yeah,
that's a good one. It always came up too, like, can it run Doom?
Doom.
And could it run Doom? No, probably not. I mean, it didn't have a frame buffer in a way to generate video, but even if it did, or you just took a section of memory and said, I'm going to map a frame buffer to that and hook up some display to it, and then wrote Doom on the IBM Stretch, 1 to 2 MIPS. I don't know. What's the lowest spec machine that Doom will run on? 386, 486, somewhere in there. And those are usually several MIPS. So, I mean, maybe a well-optimized piece of code could run a low-res version of Doom on an IBM Stretch. So that's about
Probably
it.
Not very well.
Yeah, like my PDP-11s that I have here are somewhere around 1 MIPS. And so Stretch was faster than that 20 years before it. So that's kind of impressive.
That's a perspective too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Terminal Psychosis says, my goodness, they had ECC RAM way back then and all the other tech, but my goodness, he says these guys were real trailblazers. Yeah,
they really were. And so you can see why they had so much pinned on it in terms of their hopes and aspirations. And they really, I don't know what the analogy is, not broke the bank, but they went all out, balls out, trying to do everything they could to make computation faster and parallelize it.
Yeah, pushing the envelope for sure.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Glass Hammer says, how much of the science computed on that Stretch is still classified?
I bet a good portion of it, because you can't go and get documents on the 1950s Bikini Atoll nuclear test. That's all still classified. So, I mean, the fact they happened is not classified, but if you want to know the exact pressure wave that came off and at what millisecond delay, I bet you they're not giving that information away yet, because why give it to, states that are working on their initial stages of the nuclear program? That information might still be useful.
Hello Kitty Fan Man. Why wouldn't they keep offering the Stretch to new customers, but with an adjusted performance spec? Or adjusted price, I guess, too. He said, could they not afford to keep building them at the new price?
That's my guess. I don't think they were making a lot of money on Stretch, even at the retail price. It was more of a halo project. And so let's say that 13.5 was their break even. Well, just because it underperformed and management decided to, I don't want to say take one for the team, but we'll say take one for the team and reduce the price. Even though they did that, it doesn't mean they can make any money selling them for 7.5. So they didn't. That's my guess.
And then, boy, it's interesting. So we get all these questions. I filter through them, send them off to you. We get a quick look. I stored them. And now I'm looking. I've got 2 people with 2 questions in a row. This is the first time I've noticed that. So Hello Kitty Fan Man now has another question in my queue here. Right. Wow, Dave, what would those $2.5 million be in today's inflated cost? In any sense, you'd run that through some... Is that like...
Yeah, I'd use the CPI calculator. Somewhere in the late 50s to early 60s, it's about 10 times from then to now. So it'd be like 25 million.
Electron field pulse. What exactly were they simulating? And how advanced of an algorithm did they even have back then?
I think they were, it's not called discrete event simulation. It's more like hydrodynamics, I think, where they're trying to simulate the movement of particles within the very early moments of a nuclear explosion, because A, it's hard to film, B, it's hard to duplicate, C, it's hard to do. So I think they're trying to simulate a lot of the things. And you can imagine there'd be other tasks like trying to simulate the implosion wave even on a regular atomic bomb. The math on that, because it's spherical, is probably pretty complicated. And so I bet they would do stuff like that. So all kinds of stuff related to nuclear weapons. What they were doing specifically, don't know. Out of my lane a bit, but
yeah. And then electron field pulse has another one here. How would they simulate the uranium fissioning? He says he thought that simulating molecular interactions was very difficult to get precise, like almost impossible.
Well, sir, I think you meant atomic, not molecular. But,
right.
Since you didn't ask, I won't tell you, even though I know. I'm fully apprised.
But I guess the complexity of the calculation also sort of drives part of the reason they're trying to get IBM or someone to make a machine and a computer that could aid them in that or move it further than what they're able to do manually or with current technology, right? Yeah,
Tellum must have had a pretty worked out idea of what it would require to do his calculations at the scale he needed it, because they came up with, what was it, the 2 MIPS or 1 or 2 MIPS figure, which is millions of instructions per second. So if they said, hey, this is going to take 1 billion instructions and we need it to finish in 1,000 seconds. Nobody can do that math in their head, but I'm sure it's a good number.
That's a lot of human computers sitting at adding machines in multiple rooms, right? So that's what they're trying to do. Well, one of the guys who went to, multiple people in multiple rooms, one of the guys that we went to high school with, Simon, did his PhD in aerospace engineering, and his master's thesis went up in the space shuttle. And so he got to go down to what's mission control. And he says he's in a room full of computers. And for each of those computers in that room, there's another room full of people with computers supporting that computer.
Yeah.
And it was just multiple rooms of computers supporting another computer in another room. And this would have been in, early 90s. Yeah.
Right.
But the scale of it was just, so it reminded me of that. Jim the Neils. So basically, IBM built the fastest computer, pioneered new cutting-edge hardware and new technologies decades ahead of its time, but it was a failure because it wasn't what they had touted it, despite being the best in the world. Did I get that right?
Yeah, it wasn't a failure necessarily. I think we agreed at the end of the episode that failure would be too harsh of an assessment. It was a failure on a sales financial level for them. But in terms of technical achievement, their only failure was that they set out to do 4 or 5 MIPS and they only got 2.5 MIPS. Compared to everything that was going on before it, it was still a significant stretch. Then the CDC 6600 came out and bested it, but it was a number of years before that happened. So it did hold the title of fastest computer for some number of, 5 years, 6 years, somewhere in there. But it wasn't as fast as they'd hoped.
Yeah, it wasn't a financial success.
Right.
And they didn't quite reach the goal line that they had set somewhat unrealistically or a little bit too far, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you say, I'm going to kick a 70-yard field goal, and you come out and you only kick a 62. Well, 62 is still pretty impressive, but it's not 70s.
But you did fail. No.
You failed.
Sorry.
Ice cream for winners.
It's not a race, but whoever doesn't come in first is a loser. Yeah. Ralph Dratman, a 2.5 microsecond FP multiply before 1960. Are you sure of that figure?
Yes. And better yet, it's 64-bit floating point. We're not talking like 8-bit stuff here. We're talking 64 bits.
Holy cow.
So they needed it for the precision. So, you know, it could have been 80 bits, but they needed 64 for what they were doing.
64-bit floating point in 60.
Late 50s, early 60s, yeah.
50. Excellent. XJet. A little bit of a correction here. Nope. The fastest computers ever made by man are on the Parker Space Probe. That probe has achieved a velocity of 394,736 miles per hour. So the computers on board are therefore the fastest we've ever made. It says, don't you love semantics?
Well, if you want to play that game, then you've got to account for the rotation of the solar system, and you've got to account for the movement of the solar system within the arm of the Milky Way, and the rotation of the Milky Way, and the movement of the Milky Way within its supercluster, and the drift of the supercluster itself. And I think once you do all of those things, your 374,000 whatever miles per second, whatever that number was, will pale in comparison to your actual absolute velocity. So that's what I have to say about that.
Or the relative difference is nominal.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a way shorter way to say it.
Don't give me credit for that. Yeah. I got lucky on that one. Davey K021. Very interesting. What is a modern IBM mainframe for businesses these days, if there is such a thing? So what's today's equivalent of that?
Yeah, I've got a good video on that you should check it out, actually. And not just to pimp my own video, but it's actually a good video. We went out and we toured the IBM mainframe facility to find out, do mainframes still exist? Why? And what's inside of them? And the short version of that story is, yes, they do exist. Why? It's for mission critical stuff that absolutely positively must happen, like credit card transactions or being able to do fraud screening and things like that on credit card transactions, or Ticketmaster sales. Those kinds of things are probably going to happen on a mainframe. They're generally, the Z16, I think, was the one we were looking at when we were there. And there's a newer one out now. It was the Tellum chip, and now it's the Tellum 2 chip. And so they're always advancing the state of the art. When I was there, they were up to 220 cores, because it gets 256 cores, but then you got to keep some spare just in case. So 220 cores at 5.2 gigahertz, AI accelerators built in. And so for performance, I mean, is it better than a super fast Threadripper or EPIC? Maybe a little bit, but not enough to justify the cost. But what it is you can probably set fire to one of the racks, and the other three will put the one out and keep running. So,
well, the one, I mean, other than the technical achievements, the one thing I remember from the video thing is that, don't you have the damn thing like shaking in some like earthquake testing?
Yeah, they've got an earthquake simulator that does like an 8.6 or something, and the doors are flying open and banging around. It's quite a violent video, and they've got the drop table too, was actually scarier because you don't know when it's going to drop. You just hear, and all of a sudden, bang, and this like 2,000-pound unit slams 4 feet into steel.
So is IBM still sort of the key player or king in the mainframe realm, or?
Yeah, probably more so now than ever. I don't know if they're the only mainframe manufacturer, but they're certainly at the top of that industry. You know, there used to be Burroughs and Amdahl and all these other companies were kind of dabbling, or not even dabbling, working in that market. And now it's probably just IBM. Forgive me if you are a big mainframe manufacturer and I forgot your name. Let me know in the video comments if you make mainframes and I forgot about you.
Or send you an invite and you'll come tour their facility.
Yes, there you
go. Langley NA, bit of a longer one here, but it's a couple things in it I think we can talk about. He says, hey, for someone who isn't subscribed, I watch a large quantity of your videos through start to finish. And he also sees the variation in your view counts per video too. He says, I don't know what the patterns are. And says, I don't care about the cloning voice for telemarketing thing. I think it's like a 50 plus 60% interest. Says, the age discrepancy part of the issue with establishing a consistent view count? He says his age is 1992, which makes him, 24 years younger than us. He's a young person in your demo.
Right.
Says you've enjoyed the educations of social content, given lots of that. Appreciate your talks of deeper processes of the x86 architecture. he says he thinks it's been 2 or more years now that he's been watching. And he says, what holds him back from subscribing? So I don't know, Langley, what the heck's holding you back from clicking that subscribe button?
Yeah, I've only asked you about 800 times probably in these. I don't even have that many episodes. 500 times. I don't know. It's hard to answer that. I think the biggest difference is that I'm not chasing views in that. I am chasing subs and likes because I like the subscriber count and I'm close to 1 million. So I'll be happy when it hits 1 million. But beyond that, I'm not watching the revenue too closely or the view count too closely. And so I will tend to go off and do episodes like the IBM Stretch project that because I was talking to my friend at IBM and he sent me, I sent him a link to this Poughkeepsie manufacturing of IBM machines in the olden days where he works now. And he sent me back one that was on the IBM Stretch. And I'm like, yeah, I should really do an episode on IBM Stretch. So then I did an episode on IBM Stretch. And I didn't overthink, is this really what my audience really craves from me? And because if I did that, I would just be doing why does Windows suck and why is Windows slow? And I would just pump out episodes like that week after week. And I just couldn't live with myself. So you get like 1 or 2 of those a year. And then I'll do a lot of Windows content because that's kind of where the interest and the reputation is. But yeah, if I really was chasing the view count, I could get it a lot more consistent. But I guess I'm not. So.
Yeah, and part of that is, I think you started this and you still try to do things that are interesting to you that you think
I can't do a whole channel.
Right.
I can't do a channel on PDP-11s, but I've done, 4 or 5 videos on them. I just built a massive 1183 dual chassis switch panel. It's a beautiful work of art machine, but I haven't and I probably won't do a video on it because I've done a couple PDP-11 videos. I don't know if those people would love for me to do a PDP-11 video. Trying to make that palatable or interesting to the rest of my audience is a challenge. Somebody with better videography skills and storytelling than mine could maybe do it, but I'm kind of matter of fact. So here it is. Love it or not.
It's essentially a one-person operation. So, yeah. I mean, you are retired, but still, you didn't retire so you could spend all of your time making high quality YouTube content that appeases millions of people every week. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a one person operation in the sense that I have you and I have Record and I have other people that help contribute, tutor and stuff like that to the, there's the code side and the question side and stuff. But the actual making, writing and producing, editing of the videos is still a one-man show. I'm a one-man department, let's say.
There you go. Yeah. Now we're moving on to the hacked episode here about that was our last shop talk. So sort of focused on the hacked piece related to the Apple stuff and some other topics. We'll start with that Apple-y stuff. Moonraker says, did you mean AirDrop instead of AirPlay?
Nope,
That's
AirPlay.
an interesting question because when you and I were first talking about it, that's the same thing I said. Are you sure it's AirPlay and not AirDrop? But
yeah, no, it's AirPlay because it impacts devices like speakers and TVs and anything else that you use the Apple AirPlay SDK and link their code in. That's where the bug originated. And so anybody that links that code in will have that bug. And so I think there's going to be a lot of speakers and other devices around the world that are going to be exploitable and vulnerable for a long time because how soon is your speaker manufacturer really going to rush a firmware update down to your speaker?
Well, and then you have to perform that firmware update. It doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, they may have
pushed,
automatic
right?
updates. I'm not sure, but
yeah, depending on the hardware. False McNugget Hope says, "Wait, you guys have used Apple products at some point? I've barely touched one."
I always had an Apple at home from about the time my kids were born in like the year 2000. I think the first Mac I bought was one of the very first PowerPC Macs. Or the very first one I bought was that cool one with the round base,
Right. Yeah. Those are the ones that came in like 13 different colors or something? Is that?
No, I thought they were just white. Not the iMac.
That. Okay. Oh, okay.
But the pedestal one that had the big base and then the chrome neck.
Oh,
and a big flat screen in front of it.
Okay.
Kind of looked like Wall-E or something to me. But
yeah. Right.
And then I had a Power Mac G6 or G5. Then I had the cheese grater, but it took that to work. So I always had a decent Mac at home just to kind of know what was going on with Mac. Was not a huge fan. It really wasn't until I started using their laptops about 5 years ago and then moved to use Final Cut for video editing that I kind of fell into their ecosystem. And since I had a phone, it all just kind of worked. It wasn't for lack of utility on Windows because I was really chasing Final Cut, the app, because I couldn't get Movie Maker anymore. They'd pulled that. I didn't really know about, what's the big one that I could have used? DaVinci Resolve. Had I known, I probably would have just learned DaVinci because I had a good PC with a good video card and everything else. But once I got used to Final Cut, it's like anything else. Your tools are hard to give up.
Neato. Bill Rady. He says, so he really enjoys both the channels. So can you ask a favor for convenience? Is when you have an accurate but inflammatory video title, let's say maybe, Beatty maybe. Could you do us the favor of having a chapter list that goes directly to the part of the video that talks about the video title? It says, I really want to see what you have to say, but to sit and watch potentially 50 minutes of video to get to it. So since this Apple AirPlay exploit is present in AirPlay-equipped devices that aren't made by Apple, such as speakers and smart TVs, it is something people need to be informed about. So you're doing folks a great service, but they may not be able to use it if they lack the patience or time to experience the whole video that contains the vital info. And I think I've seen this comment a few times for probably 3 different
I saw it too.
Timestamps or GTFO.
Type them in, baby, and I'll put them in the description. But I'm not watching the whole video and writing down timestamps. So if it was an AI tool that did it, I would. But otherwise, somebody's going to have to send me timestamps. What was the first part of that question?
It's just, I think it's sort of on the end. So he says, when you've got the
clickbait nature,
accurate, but the title. If your title is this, get to it. So those folks that are attracted to it because of that can sort of get in and get the hell out.
Yeah, I saw those comments and I was surprised by them because for at least the last 4 to 5 episodes, we've done basically put the lead question at the front of the episode. So as far as I know, recently anyway, we have been not burying the lead, leading with the lead. I know it's what people want. It's kind of counterintuitive. I grew up with television, which was like coming up. Why Pamela Anderson was taking out her garbage in her road, and every commercial break still coming up. You'd wait a whole episode for something to happen that you couldn't fast forward through. So,
and there was no DVR, none of that. You had to sit and watch the dang thing. And I guess if you didn't want to, you'd just set your VCR to record it, so then you could go back later and watch it. But
oh yeah, you punch in the numbers in your video guide.
Yeah, we never got to that step, but probably didn't.
I got one of those for my parents, and it worked really well.
It probably cost extra money for that version of the VCR, and our old one worked well enough we didn't need a new one that worked with the silly code. So
no, that's the beauty. Actually, the remote would just emulate your original remote, and so you would punch the numbers into the video guide remote, and it would just pretend to be your Zenith or RCA or whatever remote, and use the IR blaster to turn on and start recording at the right time. So fairly innovative and clever in that regard.
I'm going to go back in time then and fix that.
Buy stock.
Get myself.
It's unbounded. It's still growing.
So I think you're right. I think that we, the last couple episodes are trying to do that, and we'll, mix up the order of stuff a bit. I got a few thoughts about some changing that up myself a bit in the way we order the questions here. So, RC Miller, if this is something we need to know, why don't you make the video more like 5 minutes rather than 49?
It's one of the things you need to know. There's generally 49 to 50 minutes of stuff you need to know, and it has to come in a certain order. So we put the big one first, but then you really want to see the rest too, I would think.
Yeah. And I think there are, and I'm not looking for any feedback in the comment, I think there's a lot of folks that's just sort of like listening to the whole show, and whether they listen to the first 15 minutes or all of it, or they're half listening or fully listening. But some of these folks are just in it for that one little piece. So it's getting sent out to a lot of folks. So can't please everybody, but we'll tweak it. Okay. Attribute 4677 says, seeing a lot of hard edits in this video. Is that normal?
Do you know which edit he was referring to?
I guess it would be that it was the last Shop Talk episode. So.
It might have just been that, they edited it our editor trimmed out sections. I tell them to take out any like boring, uncomfortable talking over top of each other moments and stuff like that. So maybe we did more of that.
Well, I know there was quite a chunk last time. Well, last time we recorded, it went way longer than each of us thought. I think it was well over an hour. So there was
one we did where we had a lot of lag because you were in Regina, and it made for a huge back and forth, and it was very hard not to talk over top one another. So if he's talking about that one, I can see why that one happened. But
Nana Pan says at 11, I remember there being a Windows XP activation crack program where you entered your phone activation code and it would give you the valid key. It says it was released before the virus that wiped out the Eastern Seaboard power grid. He said it was lost, could never find it download again. So there's also a website that showed you how to crack it mathematically, but he says he's neither a programmer nor good at math, so it was beyond him to figure it out. But I believe there's an updated version now, on GitHub. Do you have any insights into this?
No, I'd love to see one.
Oh, really?
I've never seen a telephone activation hack. I would love to see one. I'll have to check it out. I'm curious to see what happens.
Well,
let me know in the video comments if you know before. But
someone can find one.
Yeah. Send me a link.
GitHub. Spiky Vans. What's the story of the websites that sell very inexpensive Windows licenses?
I don't know. I get approached by them all the time, to sell these. I get offers for, 20 offers a day for stuff.
Yeah.
And that's one of the common ones. And my best guess is what they do is when a PC is decommissioned, or if companies have licenses that they've purchased but wound up not using, they're reselling them. And their argument is that it's like a book. You can do that for the first person. You can't copy the book, but you can resell the book. We're not using this license anymore. We're going to resell it into the secondary market. And so there's a secondary market of product keys, which I'm sure Microsoft is not enthusiastic about. There's probably litigation going on there now. But as far as I know, they are real keys. But whether or not they are valid is a discussion for the courts and Microsoft and them to have separate from me.
Dr. Philly Cheesesteak. Oh, he's a doctor, not just a regular Philly cheesesteak. He's a educated one. Do you have any experience with Linux outside of the terminal? If so, what are your opinions of the UI differences between KDE and GNOME? Just to name two.
No, I really don't. Yes, I recognize those, but I've used one, and I don't know which one I even used. I think it was GNOME or GNOME. So no, if I have a mouse going on, I'm usually in Mac or Windows, because it's probably because of using a particular application that's not available or that I'm not used to on Linux. So I use Linux quite a bit, and I'm using it right now as we sit here. It's right on my Tempest training, but no, not with the desktop UI.
Yeah, and a couple of users were encouraging me to try that. So you were like, oh, do the WSL. So I don't know, few days ago, I went, oh, WSL did that and installed them. Like, oh, I have the Linux terminal. Okay, that wasn't what I was looking for, but it's all right. Then there's a little graphic element I can get in, so I'm still going to try a full graphic install of that just to see what it's like. And I was poking around yesterday in Linux and some online stuff, getting some code actually through ChatGPT to try and extract questions, and got it, but I just couldn't get the right emulator of my Python inside Linux, and finally at 11 o'clock, okay, I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way for now. So I went I didn't. I found another website that'll just pull it off for free. So that was kind of handy. Saved me 15 minutes. So, but yeah, anyway, fun. So when I get that, I'll have something to do. But I technically, for those folks that were helping me, I have run Linux now on my machine under WSL. I've not done much with it, but I can tick that off as achieved. Move on to the next one. Felice Enelin. Dave, have you looked at using Lua for your AI stuff? It's the much iterated version of Lua. Oh, sorry, Lua U. Is it Lua U?
Lua U. Yeah.
It says it's the much iterated version of Lua that's used for scripting in Roblox. It's more efficient than the standard variant. Has the ability to use static types. They open sourced it a while back. Might be worth a look.
I have not. I've kind of enjoyed Lua. I got a couple thousand lines of Lua code now, and it's very much like BASIC. So it's like very retro for me. It's kind of like if you had structured BASIC, Waterloo BASIC on a Super Pet, something like that. It's very akin to that. And of course, you've got classes, because I use types and classes, and I have objects and so on that you wouldn't have in BASIC. Well, maybe Quick Basic probably had those for all I know. So yeah, Lua is cool, but I am bound to the Lua interpreter that is built in a MAME, which I believe is the standard conventional Lua 5.2, and there's no way to replace it because it's built into MAME, and that's the one that's going to call your code. So if MAME had a replaceable Lua engine, which I don't believe it does, then I could probably plug that one in. Don't believe there's a way to do that.
You're stuck with Lua for your Tempest AI stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, you could use Lua U for other AI stuff, but you don't have a project there yet.
Yeah, well, this one was really driven by the fact that I had to use Lua because that's what's built into MAME. So I got half Lua and half Python.
Excellent. And it's still getting changed and getting updated and
yeah, it takes a full day to train. You know, if I make a change, now it says, well, I got to take a day and train it up and see how it does after about 24 hours of training. So every change is now a lot of training to see the results. So it's kind of like batch programming in the old days, I guess.
Networks and Woodworks says, have you ever thought about reprogramming one of your pinball machines? I can't remember if you had more than one, but I remember seeing one in one of your videos.
Yeah, I've got a Black Knight 2000, which I bought probably 20 years ago and restored. And it was a rough machine because it came out of a bar in Germany. So I had the Deutschmark coin readers. I had to switch out for English ones. And the game was just beat up. So I stripped it all down to the bare play field, which actually cleaned up really nice, and then rebuilt it by restoring, replacing, or repairing components to rebuild it back to original. And I was just happy to see the thing work again. So no thoughts of modifying it on my part. I have modified Tempest, burned my own ROMs, put my own start levels in, added purple levels after the green levels, done a bunch of weird things with Tempest just for fun. But that's not a love of Tempest and not a desire to modify arcade machines so much. So, yeah, no, I have not thought of modifying a pinball machine and probably will not because they kind of scare me and I'm just happy they work at all.
And your Tempest mods, you've got 3 different Tempest machines. So is that on the one down in the man cave or the basement that you've got the mods on, or all 3 of them, or?
The one upstairs and the one in my office, the cocktail, the sit down unit is modified so that you can start on any level without having to play up to get there first. So I can just sit down and play it. And so is the basement one, but it has a further modification where I've got a custom level table so that you can start at a whole bunch of levels that weren't checkpoints in the original game. And then the one in the shop here, which is the one that Dave Thur, the original author, set the high score on, is completely unmolested and just sits there with a little velvet rope around it.
Oh, right. That we've seen the velvet ropes in the background too, and that's what they're for. Yeah. My left, 9397. Desktop sync is on because everyone just saves all their files in their desktop, right? Everyone does that, right? Right?
Yeah, they do. That's the thing. They shouldn't, but they do. My wife has the thing where she says, my desktop is completely unmanageable. What do I do? Make a file called old files or make a folder called old files. But I already have one. Okay, well, make it called older files and just keep nesting it. It's like turtles all the way down. You know, you go into old files and there's another old files. And you go into old files, there's another old files. And it's like 3 years deep of this, or more than 3 years of nonsense. Because, yeah, people do. They just save to the desktop. And, you know, Microsoft tried to make it.
I call mine old desktop.
Old desktop. That's very, very innovative. So, yeah, people do that.
It's terrible, but I do it. Mick Andre, or Mick4NDR3. When will Task Manager finally implement searching by service, application, process names? Windows has way too many internal processes to navigate. Oh, I think you kind of talked about that in the opening of this little thing. The solution.
Yeah, I made it a little easier, but I'm wondering.
Is that the control button that sort of freezes it so then you can sort it?
That does help. I'm looking at Activity Monitor here on the Mac. I want to see if you can search by process on that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Whoa.
So, yeah, Task Manager definitely needs a little search box. I concur.
Okay. So how do you get that done?
Beats me, man. Next time I always actually have run into Matt, the guy that works on Task Manager now, a couple times. Rode next to him on an airplane a couple months ago. And so, yeah, next time I bump into him, I'll tell him, where's my search field, man? Get
someone to hold him down while you punch him in the gut until he concedes and puts it in there. Yeah.
It's not the 90s anymore. We can't do that.
Oh, okay. Real cheesy bread. Does Dave know? So I'm going to ask you, do you know about how Windows is indistinguishable from spyware?
Do I know how it is indistinguishable from spyware? It's not like, have you stopped beating your dog? Just by entertaining the question, you're granting a premise. So I do not entertain the question. How's that?
Yeah. We get a few of those. They're fun to look at. This next one here comes from some user, Glenn H. Hodges, which, it's me. So apparently someone, last time you were talking about the full self-drive, and I think I said something about full serve drive. So someone put in the comments something about that he was using it and found it to be this. And then I tried to be a smart aleck and went, oh, do you have full serve drive or full self drive? And then I popped my own question. But I know that you had a recent experience with that too.
I did. My wife has a Plaid and I don't drive it much, but it's a fine car. It's a cool car. It's 1,000 horsepower. How bad can it be? We decided to go on a road trip. Well, we didn't decide. We're taking my daughter to write her SAT, and the closest we could get it was like a 2-hour road trip away from here. So we decided to drive up there, stay overnight, take her in the morning, and come back. And so we signed up for the self-driving, I don't know if it's still called a beta, but the self-driving service, which is so much a month, because we didn't buy it with this car, because we bought it with the first two and didn't get it, because it didn't materialize. So fool me twice, shame on you type thing. But so we signed up for it, and I've used it my son had it, and we used to have it on this car when it initially came out. And so I've used full self-driving, and I've used the 12.0 version, which is where they went to AI. And I was quite impressed by it compared to where they were with 11, because it was basically rules, and it was like, oh my God, what's the big case switch statement in C somewhere? It's monstrous. But when they came out with 12, I was impressed. I could see they could get there now, but they're still, they got the 90% case. And so we did it to try and see where they're at now. And they're either at 95 or 98, because I did not, in my 2 hours either way, have an intervention that I had to make, nor did it make a mistake. and it did a couple really genius things along the way. One of them was I was in the far right lane going to exit the freeway, and somebody else also wanted to be in the far right lane and exit the freeway. And so he decided he was just going to go in front of me. And the Tesla immediately hit the brakes and steered. And then he hit the brakes because he didn't know if I was stopping or not. And then it went around him to not let him in, but it stopped so that he couldn't hit us. And so I thought, it's not only is it safe, it's like California aggressive. Speaking of which, I was not stoked about his following distance. And I know some people are like, oh, you got to follow close or people will cut in front of you. And yeah, I'll give that up to, here's 0.03% or 0.03 seconds of my life that I'll never get back. Once I got to a certain age, it didn't bother me if somebody cut into the big gap that I leave in front. Let them have it. I realize some people can't deal with that, and you would love Tesla FSD if that's the case. But if you're the kind of guy who just says, I'm going to sit back in my lane, and if you want to get in there, I don't care. Then Tesla full self-driving drives very aggressive compared to that stance. So what I do like is on my Mercedes has an older version. It's a 2018, and it's got, what their full self-driving, not full self-driving. It's more than lane keep assist. They got a name for it, but it's some marketing name. And it has an adjustable lane distance follower on the steering wheel. So if you're too close, you just 2 clicks down and now it backs off a little bit. I kind of wish it had that. The other thing it did that was really amazing was we were coming out of a restaurant that we had gone in to grab a burger, and to come back out and get in the freeway, well, now you got to go back the other way you came, but I had turned in right. So now I got to come out and go left somehow, which means I've got to go across 5 lanes of traffic, and then there's a concrete median. Then I got to get into the turning lane, go up, do a U-turn, and come back. Well, there's no way I would even attempt that. But the car looks like it's about to try. So I'm like, have at it, car. I had no idea what it was going to do, but it actually, there's all these cars stacked up like this. It wove through them like this to get through the cars, all the lanes, because there was a path. But it was coincidental. It wasn't like people had cut, left me a room. But there was room, so the car just went for it, got into the turning lane, went up, started signaling and indicating it was going to do the U-turn. But then when it started the U-turn, the guy behind me was really close, and I think it kind of changed its mind mid-operation and turned it into a left turn because it didn't want to get hit by the guy behind me so close. Other than, switching a U-turn to a left turn, which added a block to my trip, that was the only thing I was not thrilled about, but I was so blown away by this weaving through the stack of cars to get to the turning lane and that it would actually do it. And I hope it was doing it based on it's seen this situation in traffic before and not just, I'm blandly navigating and there's like cars on both sides, but they don't affect me, so I'm going straight. I don't think it was that. I hope it was the former.
Yeah, you hope it's on the intelligence part and not the artificial, I'm making this stuff up kind of part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the other thing I know, and that was quite the trip because that was sort of a door-to-door. And so it's, from your house through the town or the city and then onto the freeway and off the freeway into the resort or the place. But it always said a couple of days later that your wife took it like some appointment or something, and it took her
a couple days before
from the garage and it parked the car.
Yeah, so she signed up for the full self-driving, and she thought she'll try it. So she comes out of the garage and tells it her destination. Of course, she's going to the beauty salon, as wives will do. No, she was going to get her hair done. So she's going to hate me for that one. But she put the destination in by voice, and it drove her directly there, and it was in a mall. So it circled the mall to find a parking spot and then parked itself and did a great job at it. And she was like, she's never been an early adopter of this kind of thing because she ran Windows betas for 20 years. So
right. Yeah. She was running a computer off your dog food. Is that kind of how it works almost?
She was eating my dog food for a long time. So she's a little cynical about early software, but she was impressed by it. So cool. It's funny. I got called a Nazi today on Twitter for having mentioned that I liked the full self-driving beta. People are so passionate about that issue and anything surrounding related to Elon. I don't give a damn about Elon right now. I care about full self-driving, and he's not writing it. There's some team of amazing engineers in a huge lab that are building it, and I find that fascinating, independent of how you feel about him.
Yeah. I know we've got a few friends that have Teslas and like them, and I feel bad for the folks that are getting labeled as something because of a decision they made before. Yeah, but that's a whole other, we're probably going to get all kinds of feedback for that right now. But anyways, Master Zero FX says, using earrings now, old man?
Earrings? Earbuds?
I guess so.
Yeah, so the reason for that is I didn't want to, we could have just worn the big over-the-ear headphones like you see on Joe Rogan or something like that. but this is not really a podcast. We're not in the same room. The reason we have to do it, though, is because we're not in the same room. If I hear Glenn, it will come over my speakers. And if I'm not wearing earbuds, there's a delay, and he will then hear himself through the mic. And we don't get it as bad as getting feedback, but you get echo. And so then you have to run electronic echo cancellation on the audio stream, and it adds an artificiality to it. It's sort of a digitized processing, which I don't like. So we decided we're going to stick with the earbuds, and then we don't have to do echo cancellation, and it sounds better.
Yeah, I think for me, the echo cancellation thing, the less electronically mumbo jumbo stuff we have to have on there, the better. So this allows us to do it pure. The other thing I would say is when I first started shaving my head, I've only had hair for a couple of years now. About 25 years ago, the barber said, my head is shaped nicely for not having any hair and going bald, but my head does not work with over the ear headphones very well. That's just not a good look for me. I don't really care what I look like, but and the sound thing too. I saw something the other day. It's like, I got a sound guy. I'm not sure if he's Polish, but I might need another one. So maybe a check 1 2. I think that's dad jokes. I was just itching to throw that in.
I got one for you. You know why there are very few Native American restaurants?
No.
Too hard to find a sous chef.
Yep. Too many cooks and not enough bottle washers. Make things better. He's got a quick question for Glenn, or Glenn. Not sure how it's spelt. Sounds the same. I spell it one way. I don't care how you spell it. It's fine with me. Where are you from? Because I'm originally from England and I can hear accents. And you sound like you are from Saskatchewan, where I now live. Yeah, I'm most definitely from Saskatchewan. And it freaks me out that someone can pick
from England can place that. Yeah.
That I'm from Saskatchewan because you happen to live there now. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Glenn. It's really a strong accent there.
Oh, it can be. I'm just surprised after 24 years away from there that it's still.
I've been gone 30 and I still get busted on it every now and then.
Yeah.
Especially my kids. If I talk about something to do with Saskatchewan, they're like, oh, yeah, I was talking to my brother, eh? And they're like, why are you talking with your accent then? You're talking to us.
Talking with your accent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's funny. And then another one from a guy named Glenn with 2 N's. He spells his name the correct way. Hey, Glenn, is that bourbon you were sipping on? I got the same thing tonight. I'm not I drink like my dad used to. 2 things my dad used to do. Cigarettes. He used to like to smoke OPs, which was other people's. And then he also said when he was 19 or whatever and going to house parties, he always brought Scotch. Because he says nobody likes it. Take a swig of your Scotch. If you brought beer or rum, everyone wanted some of that. So I drink mostly. I've got a couple of friends who like to give me bottles at Christmas time, and so I drink what they gift me, which just happens to be now some Scotch. And I looked at the bottle before, but it's Glenmorangie, but it's aged in bourbon casks, so there is a touch of bourbon there. When I'm down at the head office in Seattle, though, your wife likes to pour me a little glass of bullet bourbon. So, and that's not something I'm used to, but it's a nice drink too. So,
when I first had a little money, I decided, in a restaurant after dinner, I will try one fancy drink or something. And I remember having some, I don't know, it was 30-year-old, 10-year-old, what it was, a good Scotch from what the menu said, and thinking, well, I've learned that I don't like Scotch. And then the next time I think I tried port and I was like, I don't like port either. And then I had cognac and I was like, well, it's like whiskey, but it's a little more condensed. So that's not so bad. So Louis XIV, stuff like that. If somebody wants to send me a drink, that's all I'll have. But yeah, there's a lot of fancy alcohols that I'm just not a fan of. So.
I'm not a connoisseur of like wine, all that stuff. I mean, I have some beer preferences, usually the darker stuff, but it's funny, the cognac. I remember when I was 20 or 21 and hanging out at my cousin's place. He's 3-4 years older, and it's an apartment in PA, Prince Albert or whatever. And he's got cognac, and he goes and he puts the kettle on and steams the glasses to warm up the cognac or something. And I'm like, yeah, that's just wasted on me. I'll drink the stuff, but yeah, that's just too much preparation. I just put it in a glass and drink it. Herbie 1620, carpet in the garage. The proper way to do this is take the old wall-to-wall carpet that you're replacing and cut it to fit the garage. Recycling at its best. Care to explain your carpet, Dave?
Yeah, you get 2 guesses where this carpet came from. It came from my media room. And we didn't have to cut it. It just happened to be about the right size to fit in the shop here. So we stuck it in the middle, and it absorbs sound and keeps the dogs happy, and it gives me something to vacuum once a week. So
yeah, it was an area rug that wasn't suitable enough for the house anymore and got relegated to the garage. So yeah.
Yep, 100% recycled.
It's a lovely piece. First time you've had carpet in the garage, though, so that's the other thing. This isn't a yeah.
Well, I have a little PCB mat in the
oh right. Yeah.
museum section, but that's like low pile. This is more like shag, you know. So.
The museum section. Oh my God. So last time it was the bay window, and what else were we talking about? The bay window in the garage, and the air conditioning, and now there's the vintage museum portion of the garage. Yeah.
Somebody was giving me crap for listing my cars off in the last episode, but I mean, it was a question, so I answered it. But
yeah,
they're not particularly fancy cars, like a BMW M3, a 2003. That's not exotic.
Well, and
nice
you're
car,
not flipping them every 2 or 3 years either. Like
I keep my cars for 20 to 50 years. That's why I got so many cars.
Well,
I don't sell cars.
And I mean that, like that Range Rover again. You've had that thing for what, 14 years, but it was sort of not secondhand, but it was not brand new. It was a recent lease return that you got a really good deal on, and so you bought it, and you've driven it, and it doesn't get a lot of mileage, and you've kept it, and you maintain it, and it's still in brand new shape, so they're not getting thrown away or wasted or, flipping them. So it's a little bit, anyways, that's a whole other, don't get me started. Howlery. Last two. I have my Mesmerizer and love it. It was mentioned in this video about a jumper you can put in to cut back the sensitivity of the VU meter. Can you please tell us where to put that jumper? And I think I responded directly to it. I was going to grab mine, but so it's on the back where the mic input is and the infrared input is. And right behind there's 4 jumpers or 4 pins.
Is it 4 or 3 pins?
There's 4 pins.
Okay.
So you get a jumper, and I'm not sure whether you jump the 2 on the top or the 2 on the bottom or the middle 2. And I don't have enough sound stuff going on here, but if you're in a place that has some background sound to it, it will be really obvious which of those 3 potential options increases the sensitivity and decreases the sensitivity.
I don't think you could hurt it by putting jumpers on not on other pins, but on those 4 pins that are right by the microphone. There's a couple of ways, obviously 1, 2, 3 that you could do it. Try them all.
Yep. And it's noticeably different. So I'll leave the experiment to you. I think most people can try 3 options.
There's a couple Mesmerizers still on eBay, so grab one quick before I run out if you want one.
Yeah, and your wife was sitting down at the bench the other day boxing up a whole bunch more, so they're all hand packaged by Dave's wife. So
right.
Keep it, which is the other thing too. Like, every one of those Mesmerizers has been, programmed by you at your desk and packaged by your wife at the table, and it's a fun little family project. Last one here, Dave.
All right.
Big box, little box. On the introduction of some of the Dave's Attic and Garage Shop Talk videos, there's a picture of Javier Bardem wearing Photoshop sunglasses. What's the significance of this picture?
So years ago, in an old episode, I made some mistake, and I needed to put video title over it to correct my mistake. But I had Anton, the editor. I am the editor, but
Anton Chigurh.
I needed, Anton, the editor, as my alter ego. And his head popped up, and he kind of looked at me and frowned, and then the text correction came up, and then his head just went back down. And so I did that a couple times because it entertained me. And then when we needed something for Shop Talk, I've had that clip art sitting in my downloads folder or wherever. So I had put the glasses on him and stuff like that to make him look more studious. And so we stuck him in the intro. We haven't used it for quite a while now, but that is the story. So now we have an actual editor. It's not just an alter ego. So we have an editor for Shop Talk named Joseph. And so, hello, Joseph. He does our editing for us. And that is probably what I assume he looks like, because I've never met him. So in my head, he is Anton, the editor.
Yeah, but we stopped using it recently for, I guess sort of go, where is that? Yeah. Or you were worried that, is someone we're going to get in trouble for more than fair use of that? Or
Yeah, I kind of figured it was fair use because it's modified and it's brief and it's short, but it is a person's likeness. And so I want to be respectful and not milk that one. So we stopped using it.
Subs, likes, Dave's Attic, Dave's Garage, Shop Talk, blah, 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 blah.
Make sure you're subscribed to Dave's Attic. If you got this episode, we have like 50,000 views a week sometimes, and we sure don't have 50,000 new subscribers. So, do your part, would you? I would appreciate it if you would consider subscribing and leave a like and leave a comment, and better yet, leave a question, because then we will answer it next week if we can get to it. So thanks very much for joining me, Glenn, and thanks to the audience as well. In the meantime and in between time, hope to see you next time right here in Dave's Attic.